Hello, 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 and welcome back, everybody, to another stream of Boomeadow builds. We're still working on the autumn and winter courts within the mirror plane of Feyawyr, which is within my own kind of little homebrewed world that I'm doing. So, yeah, so welcome in, come along for the ride, and, you know, you can ask me questions about my world, D&D, things like that, other projects that I'm doing, and yeah, let's jump on in. As you can see here, this is the current layout of the entire world that I will be working on, and at the moment we're working in the upper left-hand corner there, which will be the transition from autumn to winter. Now, hopefully I have configured this right. Yes. So, as you can see, we've been, over the last few sessions, we've been putting town names in, just doing some terraforming and things like this. Eventually, once it is built, there will be a large tree root and whatnot throughout, which is Yggdrasil, the world tree. But at the moment we're just kind of populating the space. At the moment I'm thinking I want to obviously do some trees and things like this. So yeah, let me know if the music's too loud or anything like that, or if I need to be louder or whatnot. So at the moment, so with Boomeadow builds, once a fortnight we'll be going to the 8:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time slot, and roughly going through for about 4 hours. So partway through I might end up having to change the portion of the map that I'm working on, because we might have hopefully completed autumn and winter this time around. So I hope you're all doing well today. Now, do I want to start with think I want to start with, as you can see, the big world map that I've got there. But I think I want to start with some snow trees, but they are way too big. So we only want them to be this big for our stamp options. I'm never really sure about how densely populated I want to make all of this in terms of trees and whatnot. And they're going in on the third layer. To make my maps, I use Incarnate, which is a really, really great fantasy map builder for those who haven't used it before. And they do have some really good options at the free level as well. Eventually I'll put these territory lines in a little bit neater and not bright red, I think. Maybe I should put in some more kind of like fantasy aspects. Maybe put in some ruins. What are we thinking about that? What are some of your favourite stories about like the Fae from any culture? I like looking at different Fae stories from a lot of cultures. I primarily obviously know a little bit about the Celtic and Gaelic mythos and things like this, as well as some relatively intensive god mythos in terms of Norse, Celtic, and just I'm really inspired by a lot of those mythos and stories and religions and things like this, because obviously we want a diverse culture and world. But yeah, so what are some like fairy tales that kind of jump out to you that you personally like? Where are we thinking we'd like a dense forest too? Do we think that there'd be a huge dense forest in the Arctic regions? Like all my text, just while I'm here. We'll make sure that all the text is on layer 5. Just in case they're not. I can see that I'm going to have to very small. Bring it in here. Just fill in some of these little places. One of these days I'm actually going to print this out properly and put it onto a globe and see how it actually all aligns, because that'll be really cool if I did that. For my own perspective, I think. Just so I can see it as a 3D world as opposed to just a flat landscape. I think there are some regions in this area as well that need some more hills, more hill ranges. So I've been really excited about my Tuesday group because they are playing, essentially in the first era of this world, which means we're doing some fun backlore building on how the world came to be the way that it is by the fourth era and the fourth generation. Just save the many, many trees we have in this. So we've been back building the lore, the mythos, because originally when magic was created in this world, it was the creation of a Empyrean entity, an eldritch god, basically, whose sole purpose was magic. And she essentially was the essence of magic. And her twin was the very essence of creation itself. So yes, her twin was the very essence of creation itself, and so there was a lot of really exciting things that we've been kind of figuring out, because prior to the second era of the world, magic was usually created by the sacrifice of a twin, one twin with eldritch blood, essentially. And part of the storyline of some of my players is legitimately the fact that they want to stop that sacrifice of the twins and things like this, because that is their storyline. They don't want to be seen as the twins of prophecy, which of course, they are well within their right to do and things like this. So they are having a fun time trying to basically figure out how not to destroy all magic in the world, but we have kind of yet to discover how they want to do that. So this right here, by the way, is the Winter Court, which is led by, obviously, the Dark Fae Queen. And in my kind of setting, the Dark Fae is actually representative of emotion, whereas the Light Fae are representative of logic. So the heart versus the mind, as opposed to they're chronically evil or something like that, which they're not. So they can come across as the Dark Fae, especially like the Dark Elves and things like this, can come across as quite cold. But it is because they are masters at controlling their emotion. They spend years, decades, centuries mastering their emotion. So if they are showing a certain emotion to you, it is because they are doing it deliberately. They are opening themselves so that you can see that. Whereas the Light Fae can come across, again, cold, but it's in a certain way that they don't necessarily emote as much, because to them everything comes down to a logical choice, clearly. And so they choose to have fun, they choose to make deals. They are more classically your canonically wily kind of fae, basically. And part of this all came about because the world as it stands, well, as it used to stand, was created by the draconic gods, who were formulated or brought into being by the goddess of fate after one of the Empyrean gods who had supported the Titan King had been stripped of her powers, and with her powers the goddess of fate had created the draconic gods who created the world, the elemental dragons, basically. And that kind of story was all explored in the second era with the Realm Witches, and why there was some instability there. And part of that is because the draconic god of the day, he was representative of the daytime, the daylight, the sun, he was not who he appeared to be, at least within the scope of the world, in the scope of the story. And he had actually carved out one of the draconic gods from the tapestry of fate. So yes, he had carved out one of the draconic gods from the tapestry of fate, thus making him not exist, and because he didn't exist, it created problems, which then led to instability, because he was supposed to be the father of all dragons. So the draconic gods and dragons in general in the world didn't know they were dragons. Dragonborns obviously didn't know they were dragons. They were believed to be just another form of lizard folk and things like this, because dragons didn't exist, because the god that was supposed to be the father of all dragonkind within the mortal world basically was banished to the void of purgatory, and his name carved from the tapestry of fate. And the whole point of the Realm Witches in the Second Era was that they were to uncover this secret and basically right this great injustice in the world, because it was causing great instability. Because to create the Realm Witches, it meant that the goddess who represented the Dark Fae, who created the Dark Fae, was actually incredibly unstable, because she didn't necessarily fit in with her father's narrative. And there was a fear there between the queen of the goddess of the Light Fae and the Dark Fae, that if they didn't acquiesce to these whims and things like this, they too would be gotten rid of. So yeah. So just changing over our music. Go. Okay. So yes, I'm still trying to decide where we should put some forests, where we should put some extra hills, some barrows, things like that. And so eventually I will save this at a higher resolution and bring all four halves together. Now this section in the middle, in Aranea, I don't really know what I want to do with it, because I want this to be a home of everyone's favourite arachnids, spiders, weavers, but they are legitimately the spiders who weave the tapestries of fate. Or at least produce the silk for the tapestries of fate. So I don't know. I kind of want to make some different areas in here. I don't know if it should just be hills or a forest. Any thoughts are appreciated. So this is kind of like the oozing court. Basically, this is where autumn meets winter. So basically, water meets earth. Because I use a lot of kind of the connotations of the elemental wheel and kind of pagan references with the magic, the elements, this kind of thing. And the whole key is to basically just make it look sporadic, not deliberate. I don't know how dense I should make the forest in the Arctic region though. Do we have any thoughts on that? I've had a lot of fun playing around on Incarnate as I've started to learn how to use it a bit better and things like this. In terms of changing the colours of the shading and on items and things like this. Just seeing what you can kind of do, how far you can push it, and building some really beautiful maps actually. I had a lot of fun building a pirate cove that had these gradients in the water that made it look like there were sandbars and waves crashing against the coast and things like this. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to that style of town map and things like this. Obviously, if you caught my stream a few weeks ago, I was custom building some city type assets that I would be able to use to populate a more modern style city, because this is in a time when magic has really come along. Arcana tech is on the rise. We have that very much cyberpunky kind of setting. In this part of the world though, I'm thinking I'm going to take it a bit more slightly more steampunk-esque, I think, to keep a little bit more of that natural-esque fantasy elements to it, and keep that real futuristic cyberpunk kind of setting to the what is essentially the material plane in this kind of section, even though the material plane is actually this particular plane, so the Feyawyr plane, which is now known as Feyawyr, the material plane, which is known as Enthalemir, and the hell plane, which is going by the name of Nethreg, and they are all on the same plane of existence now, but they are essentially parallel planes. So there is still a level of plane jumping to jump between them and things like this, but they all simultaneously exist on the material plane at the same time due to the shenanigans of the resummoning of the Titan King, the Necronomicon, and the like that. So by now, after running my world for about 5 years, it's actually managed to get a very heavily established world lore. And there have been some absolutely fantastic stories that have come through this and helped shape the way the story has come together. To anybody who is just jumping in and listening, if you're liking what I'm doing or you want to be part of the chat or things like that, just click the follow, select notifications, and you will see whenever I go live, which at this stage is every day, Monday to Friday, usually 10:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time for an hour. And it can be anything from map building like this to I've been playing through Little Witch in the Woods and Garden Story, and in addition to that, I also, as I said earlier, I'm going to be running this once a fortnight from 8:30 Eastern Standard Time until 11:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time, just so we can, get some decent map building in and things like that. And very sporadically, I do stream on Friday nights too, when a group of friends and I get together to just play some Xbox. Usually it might be Ghost Recon Wildlands, Siege, things like this. I warn you, I'm not very good. I'm not much of a shooter, but it's all about having fun. So... and in addition to that, if you want to see more of me for whatever reason, I am actually a player over on Evil One's channel on Sunday nights in a Star Wars Fantasy Flights game. I play a Jawa named Yobin, and we are just basically trying to not owe people money and, play out a nice story together. So if you want to see that, there are also links for that down in my About section if you want to see more about that. Evil One has some really great stuff over there. So I believe he's got a lot of stuff upcoming as well. Now I do have to be careful, because there is a giant tree here. So there's actually a lot of little places. These tree roots and everything will actually have this level of opacity on them. In the actual... actually, I think they're a little bit more opaque than this. Transparent than this. When the map will be finished, just so you can actually see the things underneath it, because there are actually, like for example, over here, there is actually a deep lake and things like that underneath. Now, around these tree trunks and whatnot though, I did actually want to put in some hills. Question is, do I want to go the standard hills or do I want to go some green mountains? I might go some green mountains. Now the problem is I'm going to have to blend these a little bit in these ranges here. big mountain will need to come up one. Now here comes the problem. Some of this is just literally moving it around a lot and finding what you like the look of. This one I think needs to go down a layer. And I might actually move some of these creeks and things because it doesn't make sense for them to be there once the tree is in. Because a giant tree root would probably displace certain things. The only thing I want to be careful of is because I want them to, all of these kind of things to match up, I will have to be careful that I don't, where the map crosses over the border, that I don't change that too much. I go like this actually, because there is a creek there. I'll go like this and I'll move it around the creek, I think. Like that. Then I might go a bit smaller again. I think I need some in-between ones. That picked a very nice random one. I actually like that in there. I just got delivered boba. I quite like boba. I think these ones are a little bit too big. So I like that one that's come in behind it a little bit. Hug that a little bit. Across just a little bit. another thing I was going to do while I'm here, just taking a break from putting in mountains, we were going to change some of the names of the oceans. So now we have the Darthallan, the Darthallan Ocean. Making sure I've got an E acute. Crathania Ocean. I think they're the only ones in this particular area. Okay. Oh, that was cool. I hadn't realised that it does that yet. So that was a nice touch. So at the moment we're just putting in some mountains and things that have been displaced, like displaced earth basically, around this giant route we have here. Might go even a bit smaller again, I think. Actually, we won't do these ones yet. But one thing I can do that's going to actually make it easier is this particular route here. Put it in. We'll get it in position and we'll make it grow. Krista, make it grow. Sorry, I watched Fern Gully the other day. Which is a highly underrated movie if you have not watched it yet. other map, I think I put it in at 0.035, which, turn that off. So that's about the opacity it'll be on the map. Although, well, especially because I want to see the creeks and rivers underneath. But I am open to suggestions. Move this down. Yeah, I wanted there to be a lot more displaced earth, hills, barrows, this kind of thing. Might take some of this down to hill. I'm wondering if I should recolor these hills a little bit. They're very green, but it is starting to get a bit more up to winter. Clearly I put a little place down here intending there to be a place. Not going to do that though. And we'll go back to putting in some trees. So yes, what was the consensus on, should we have an Arctic forest? I'm thinking winter could use one. I think I want to put some ruins in too. Ruins might be interesting. Welcome. Come join us while we map build for my version of the Feywild in the 4th era. Whoa, definitely have to save. So this is the 4th era of the world. It is after the fall of the Titan King. Well, after the summoning and the defeat of the Titan King. He actually fell before the first era of the world and was locked away in Tartarus. But through the manifestations of the goddess of magic, the Necronomicon made it possible for him to return to this plane of existence, and as he was slowly summoned back to the plane of existence, it pulled the Feyawyr, the material plane, and the Hells into a kind of parallel material plane, so they are kind of sandwiched over each other. There is still the need for plane jumping to get between the planes of existence, but technically they are all on the same plane of existence. At the moment, we are generating the Feyawyr version of this parallel plane, which is known as Feyawyr. And we are currently working on the autumnal and winter courts. The dark Fae in my world are representative of emotion, and the light Fae are representative of logic. So the mind versus the heart argument. So they're not evil. That doesn't mean to say that they can't make cunning or cruel decisions. It's just, if a dark Fae is showing you any form of emotion, it is because they are deliberately letting you see that. Because they are masters of mastering their emotion. I don't want to put too many trees on the actual borderline. When I bring all the maps together, I'll actually go through and I'll lay down some trees in those areas just so that it's a bit more seamless. Should I make these forests a bit more populated, so it's like a dense forest? Should I make it a dense Arctic forest? Or should we populate some things like some barrows, some ruins first? This here is the Winter Eladrin Court, which is one of the 4 Eladrin courts that obviously serve the World Tree, Yggdrasil, which is in the centre here, as you can see. And in the actual particular setting, magic is kind of low because in the first era, the way magic was created was changed through the choices of a group of people who did not want to be sacrificed so that magic could continue. So basically they found a new way to create magic, which was, they realised, mining the sap of the World Tree. And this is how Arcana Tech came into existence, because it not only was it a power source for magic, but it was also a powerful power source for technology as well. And that technology was actually pioneered by the Quarry and the Kalishtar, who within my setting are actually an alien race. Not just a spirit race, they're an alien race from another planet that was destroyed long before the world came into creation. Right. Shift the spacing around a little bit on this. see why I can't layer that the way I want to. Some of these clusters of hills are actually already formulated as groups, so that's why I'm not able to layer them the way that I want to. I mean, these are no butt hills, but the iconic butt hills that as my players have named them. That is not what they are called, but that is what the players have named them. They are actually, the butt hills are actually a set of hills that surround a town known as Gumnut Valley. In the second era of the world, right before the fall, basically, there was a giant meteor event that ended up smashing into the world, and it was through the power of the realm witches that the complete annihilation of the world was prevented. Wonder if I can put in that central stump. Hello, everybody. How are you all this evening? Well, as you can probably notice, the hill stamps that they've got there are already pre-formulated, and it just so happened, and I wasn't thinking about it like this when I built it, I placed it in a way, and it wasn't until one of my players actually turned around and said to me that, they turned around and said to me that it looked like a woman laying face down on a mattress with her bum in the air. And I'm like, really? Really, guys? But isn't that just players for you? They will literally take everything and just find a way to make the worst out of it, I suppose. But it has meant that there have been some really fun, little things that have happened because of that. So. Yes, so not only did they create the bum hills, which I believe it was legit called, the hills themselves were called Gumnut Valley, because in the Second Era, all of the towns in the kingdom that kind of like corresponds with the Earth realm that is kind of like overseen by the wood elves and things like this, it was believed that the wood elves were sung from specific trees. So each of the wood elf families, their surnames were a type of tree. So Ash's Briar, the family was called the Ash family. Oaksbriar, Cherry Port, things like this. So Gumnut Valley was obviously overseen by a wood elf family known as the Gumnuts. And obviously it kind of spiraled out that when the players finally went there, obviously because it was a eucalyptus-led town, there were obviously a lot of, and obviously I've got Australian players because I myself am Australian, so there were a lot of koalas in that town. And not only did the players systematically get the koalas all drunk, but they actually managed to turn it into a national holiday that ended up being preserved even after the Starfall. And the day became known as Gur Day. Gur Day. Because one of the koalas that was adopted, one of the players called it Gur. And they managed to take this event of the koalas getting completely drunk and destroying the town, completely TPing the town and all this kind of stuff. They actually managed to spin it that it was a sign from a god that they had not connected with their neighbours and things like that for such a long time, that this fortuitous event had come to pass that would encourage them to get to know their neighbours, to help them clean their houses and share a meal together. And so, yeah, the group managed to make it into a national holiday. Oh, it was absolute pandemonium. Just through sheer luck of rolls, they managed not to get discovered that it was them. And yeah, so they managed to spin it to the townsfolk that this was a fortuitous act of God to teach them to reconnect with their neighbours and regain a sense of community. So it was definitely a very interesting spin that they managed to make for it. There were a lot of kind of like situations like that. There were simultaneously two groups traveling through the world, and one of the groups was looking for the other group but didn't realize that they were looking for them. And so the druid of the party, of one party, basically sent animal messengers with a limited message to basically tell them that they were coming for them. But because the group that was traveling, they were not the brightest of groups. They ended up sending like, I think 40 ravens or something like this with like half messages, like an answering machine, that ended up coming across to the paladin that they were looking for as a very ominous, we're coming for you, and when we find you, that's when we'll see you kind of thing. So, which obviously made them feel very safe. But that is exactly how I suppose mythos and world lore is kind of built. There is a level of the story that obviously I've built for my players and things like this, obviously for the world that they traverse in and whatnot. But because I've been running this world now for about 5 years, there is actually a large portion of this story that is actually thanks to the players that have been in the world before. So, because, regardless of whatever happens, I actually really like kind of paying homage to the players and the characters that have been in the world, that, allowing them to be immortalized, for trying to be the heroes that they want to be, or, that kind of thing. So the part of the world I'm working on right now is actually the autumn and winter court. There's this kind of like in between the oozing destitution, which is kind of like, for lack of a better word, the mud court, where, because obviously the autumnal court is signified by the west and water, the winter court is signified by earth and the north, and so they kind of meet in the middle. And so we have the mud court, which is kind of like this in between land between them, I guess, of which I will eventually need to formulate, I think, a few more Fey lords and ladies who basically oversee this place. Not just that, so because this is and so much of that, and the way that I tend to write, my players do turn around and tell me that it is a little bit chaotic and loopy, the way that I write, because I try to leave it just vague enough that I can go back and I can make stuff up that fits as the story goes on, as opposed to having to flesh out everything right from the get-go, because obviously that's never going to work. You're going to drive yourself insane, and you're never going to play in the world if you try to populate everything. And I very much did start with the concept of start with one town and build out from there. And so because of that, we actually started in, at the time, and I didn't know this at the time, the what is now known as the second era of the world. We actually started in the second era of the world, where they were a group of heroes that had essentially been created by the gods, not them specifically, but their bloodlines. And so it left room that if players wanted to leave, or characters died or things like this, there would be that chance. Or even if just a player wanted to play a different character, there was that possibility for change. Oh, thank you for the follow. So they kind of had that ability to change it up and things like this. And so a lot of my story is based around that kind of elemental pagan kind of wheel. So the nature, like earth, air, fire, water, dark and light. As I said earlier, dark and light in my world isn't good and evil. It's actually logic and emotion. Because I feel like that the reason I wanted it that way is because it is very much two sides of the same coin. And the whole focus on the world is to, especially in the second era, it was about bringing balance back to the world, because there was a great imbalance, because the god known as the Day Father, who was thought to be the sun god, the god of the day and things like this, it turned out he wasn't who he said he was. And he had actually removed the god who was supposed to be in that place, which was his son, who was supposed to be the god of all dragons and essentially the next head god of the age. He had removed him and banished him to purgatory, and then he had gone to the tapestry of fate and completely removed that son's name from the tapestry, which created this huge blank spot. And then obviously, because it did throw things out of balance, because actions have consequences, and my worlds are very much actions have consequences. It threw everything out of balance, and this led the draconic elemental gods of the era to create a race of heroes. But obviously the only way that this could work is if those heroes, as they were awakened, or awoken, should I say, they were given a choice. They had to choose to be the hero, to take on this this birthright, and they had to go on a journey. And the whole point of the story was their journey to awakening their realm witch powers and basically fixing the tapestry of fate or destroying the gods. I gave them that option, that it didn't matter what their outcome was. I didn't care if they destroyed the gods. I didn't care if they fixed the tapestry. I really didn't care what they did. Like, there was that option that, and what ended up coming to pass is they had ended up, for the third era of the world, they had ended up becoming the new gods of the era, and allowing the old gods, so the old elemental draconic gods, to essentially rest a little easier. They were still prevalent, but they were able to take a step back, I suppose, by the third era. And so for this particular world now, this world has now had 3 different pantheons, because I now have a group that's traveling through on Tuesday nights who is actually playthroughing, like 5 years on, playing through the first era of the world. And you know, it's a completely different pantheon because it's the Eldritch gods, who basically had created the draconic gods after the one of their own had tried to essentially take hold of the pantheon, and in a very Zeus Kronos kind of situation, tried to overthrow the god of creation. Obviously he failed, and he and his minions were punished and banished to Tartarus, or had their power stripped. A large number of them had basically been trapped in the spaces in between the planes of existence. But their leader, who had become known as the Titan King, made a deal with the goddess of magic that because he knew he was going to lose during this battle, he actually made a deal with the goddess of magic that he would not fight his banishment as long as she made it possible for him to return someday. And so in the third era of the world, that was basically the story of the third era of the world, of the players got, somehow, magically, ended up with a copy of the Necronomicon. And basically they started summoning all these creatures, and the way the book was written is they had to summon creatures that were further into the book so that they could get ingredients or certain things that they needed to basically banish the ones that they had summoned prior, which is what kept the story going. But during all of that, they had their own personal stories that they were doing, that they were making their mark on the world. They discovered that there was a very long-standing plot from the, right up from the first era, that the Dark Quarry, so the dark spirits, because obviously the Light Quarry are the ones that bond with people to make the Kalishtar, but the Dark Quarry, who, as I said before, are an alien race in this world, they were basically trying to overtake the world and things like this. And thanks to them, this is where in the fourth era now, thanks to them, there is a lot less magic, because they really pioneered ether mining, so the mining of the sap of the world tree for magic, and they created weapons and things like this. So that's where this story will eventually be going. But the gods of the era are previous player characters, and I still talk to those people, and I'm like, hey, what would your character do if they had this person worshipping them, and things like this. There's also, as I said, Gerde, there's certain types of weapons and things like that that have been built that, thanks to a Tabaxi artificer in the group. There are magic in and of itself. The fact that ether mining became a thing, as I kind of pointed out now, like this could completely, the fourth era could end up being a completely mirrored parallel timeline, because obviously the Tuesday group is actually playing through that story now. So they may not end up using the sap of the world tree to create magic instead of having eldritch blood and one of them being sacrificed, because that's kind of their story at the moment. But that's still something that they have a chance to do. And because I haven't completely formulated the fourth era now, and because we're going a slightly lower magic setting, there is that possibility that what they do in that game will affect even into the future of this game. You know, because I want my players to feel like what they do matters in the world. Like, you know, while D&D is a game, you know, you still want your characters to feel like they're a part of the world. So, a little bit of a long-winded rant about that, but there you go. Yes, it is a long history, basically, in this world, and I've had a lot of fun DMing the people in it. I've had fun telling their stories, or helping them tell their stories, should I say, you know, because that's what you do as a DM. You help the players facilitate their stories. So now I think I'm going to bring some of these pine trees down just a little bit further, and then I'll start putting in a few more regular like oak trees, I think. So this is the world tree in the center for those of you who have just joined. The Winter Eladrin Court is here. We have the Winter Court of the Fae up here. And so in the fourth era of the setting, because magic is low because of ether mining and things like this, in the actual, what is known as the material plane, I suppose, there has actually been a rise of powerful magic users who do have access to magic, who do have a powerful control of magic, and basically they have become these tyrannical witch queens. And so there are humans and things like this who have escaped to Feyawyr, this plane that I'm working on right now, to basically escape their tyranny. And it is this part of the world that we will actually start the game in, so that the group can start out having, you know, a pretty normal D&D experience, like starting at a lower level, and actually just getting to have some fun in the world, basically. So, you know, doing typical D&D things, finding ruins, fighting monsters, this kind of thing, before they, you know, have to really sink their teeth into the greater story, which is they could fight the Witch Queens, they could not fight the Witch Queens, they could, you know, figure out a completely different way forward from magic. They could, I know that there is also issues with the Fae because of the way that the world tree has been affected. There is going to be issues with, so there is a third parallel material plane that connects to this, which is the Hells, also known as Nethraig. And Hell has issues because obviously magic is failing and things like this. It's starting to mean that their demon deals and stuff like this is starting to not stick as much. So that is a problem. Formulating some fall trees. What other trees have we got in here? Just regular trees. Yeah, your jungle trees. We won't do jungle trees. That wouldn't make sense. But yes, I'm still trying to decide whether I should put some ruins in already in this map. I'm putting in all these trees now, but do you think we should do some ruins? Do you think we should do... I think I asked a bit earlier as well whether we should do a dense Arctic forest, some ruins, whether we should put in some smaller townscapes for like village clans and things like this of different fae and things like that. What are we thinking? As I'm just populating trees. Do another save. Because a lot of these individual trees do take up time. Once we finish populating this part of the world as well, we'll probably make it through to a different part of the one of the different courts this stream, maybe. Which the question would be, do we continue with summer, autumn, summer, or winter, spring? I use Incarnate, which is an internet program. God, that sounds terrible. You find it on the internet. They do have some really good free resources, but even their pro program, which is what I use, which is how I get all of these extra styles and everything like this to open, it's still pretty affordable. But if you don't use it a lot, even their free stuff is actually still pretty phenomenal. So that's Incarnate with a K. And I've used this for several years now, and they're constantly updating stuff. I believe from just looking at their Reddit and Twitter and things like this, I believe that they are starting to consider isometric maps. It's not just world maps that they do. You can actually, if I open up and show you, bear with me while the art loads, you can actually make battle maps and things like this as well. So I know that they are doing some more futuristic stuff, I believe, but at the moment it's mostly fantasy stuff. So but yes, this artwork will take a whole second, so bear with me please. Take the minute to go get a drink or go to the bathroom or something. Okay, so see, here we go. So as you can see, there are a lot more of top-down kind of stuff, smaller items. So you can populate rooms and stuff like this. Everything from gothic horror, wizarding kind of stuff, dwarven dungeons. So they're all kind of like for the rooms and stuff like this. When I build towns and whatnot, they do have assets for that as well. So as you can see, these are like obviously for closer up and things like this. Fae houses, obviously, elven houses, crystals. So, you know, these are for like hill style maps, walls. They have textures, different textures for floors and things like this in the paintbrushes and whatnot. Trains, ships. And so as you can see, here's the more map buildy kind of stuff. Hello, Tyrant Dungeon. Yeah, there are still limitations, obviously on the size of the maps you can do and stuff, but this also does have the benefit of, okay, so you've got all of this kind of stuff, but as I said before, it doesn't really have a lot of futuristic stuff yet, so you can actually upload your own assets and stuff as stamps if you want to, which is really, really great. It's something that I actually use a lot. And I'm actually in the process of making my own skyscrapers and things like this for the more futuristic towns and whatnot. But as I said, I think I have read that they are working on some more futuristic stuff. So, oh yeah, Tyrant Dungeon. Uploading your own assets helps. I mean, it has made this particular process of this map so much easier. So this actually starts out as a much bigger map. I can actually show you. So this is actually the full scale map. When it is what it will look like when it's all together. But you can actually cut sections as I've done. And so now I'm just working on a smaller scale. And then when you open it, you can actually open at different resolutions. So at the moment I'm working on a 2K resolution, but you can actually open it at a higher resolution, so 3K, 4K, save it at a higher resolution. So, you know, you get that detail that you want. So yes. It's a really good product, and I really like it, just because it has really helped me do a lot of maps like this. I've been using them for a couple years now, and even since I've used them, like it's even ever since I started using them, they've improved massively. Like this quality of like the coloring, the frosting, everything basically. There are all filters that you can do, like do finishes and things like this, which I will probably do on the final edit of this map. So it's all consistent, obviously. Because as anyone who has played with me before knows, I am all about consistency. Or I try to be. How are you tonight, Tyrant Dungeon? Anyway, we missed you on Sunday night. I hope you're feeling a little bit better. Tyrant Dungeon and I play together in a Star Wars Final Fantasy game that is hosted by Evil One. Oh, that's good. Yes, Tyrant Dungeon and I play in a Star Wars Final Fantasy, that's not right. Fantasy Flight game on Evil One's channel. You can actually, if you're interested in that, you can actually find it linked down in my About section. And we play on Sunday nights. So if you're a bit more interested in Star Wars and things like that, you should check us out. Tyrant Dungeon is currently playing a guest star, a battle droid named, a French battle droid named Roger. I don't think I do. I'll have to learn how to do that later from you. Yeah, I should definitely give Evil One a shout out, because I do actually play in a couple of games with Evil One. I will be joining him on Thursday night shortly for a Vampire the Masquerade game. And we are on the opposing Wednesdays, so I'll be doing these streams once a fortnight, so like tonight and in a fortnight. But otherwise, I will be on there playing a grung, because we are playing a complete grung game known as Grung Gang, and we are chaotic little frogs who are just, it's very pop culture-y. So yeah, you should definitely check us out. If you want me to want to see me play a very chaotic little wild magic sorcerer grung. So this is not actually the first time I've run the concept of this world, but it is the first time I've actually pulled it into the narrative, because this was actually once a standalone game, this particular concept setting that I'm working on now. But obviously when I get a new group of players in it, it will change infinitely because no two games are the same. Yeah, that's the hardest part. Like, so many D&D games, so many games in general. But I do know that Evil One is doing a lot more of these fortnightly games, just so, you know, have time to prep for everything. I think that's, you know, the tabletop DM's biggest issue of trying to actually find time to prep for all of the D&D games. Or I don't think he's doing a lot of D&D. I think the Grung is actually the only D&D one he's actually streaming. But I know that he has an Aliens game upcoming. I think he's also planning a Star Trek one. We're going to have Vampire the Masquerade. We're going to have the Grunt Gang, and we've got the Star Wars game as well. So, oh, and the Feng Shui game. I just don't know when he's planning that one too. So, just trying a whole heap of new games after playing D&D for so long. Yeah, I think it's gotten to that point where we're like, hey, we want to just try something different for once. So, so we'll see how that goes. I don't think anything that I don't think anything that interesting happened. That's not true, Tyrant. Ash is going to be eaten, apparently, by... you remember the big cat things we were fighting? Yeah, well, there was one on the ship that has been cybernetically modified by what they have called in their instructions the Fluffy Protocol. And so Ash, resident mercenary, is most likely going to be eaten. We think, maybe. Well, when you played in the third era of this world, you did play a very interesting little Dream Boy. So, I also don't, the Nexu. I also don't necessarily run all of the classic D&D races in my world. I do actually have some really good third-party kind of stuff, like Heliana's. That was there were a lot of Kickstarters that I've kind of like supported and things like this. So Heliana's has had some really good races in it, including a pangolin style race, so an armored armadillo. I think there's also like an axolotl race. There's like a shadowy kind of a shadow creature who lacks emotion and things like this as a part of the way that he is born or whatever. Yeah, I actually really, really like using... I like my worlds to be a bit more custom, and I like there to be, different varieties of things. So, that it does truly feel like a massively diverse world that, there are lots of different cultures. And the best part about running this particular setting in a more Feywild setting is it's going to allow me a lot more freedom to have those... a lot more animal, a lot more Fey kind of races that we wouldn't necessarily see in some of my other worlds. When I was running the third era of the world, as you would know, Tyrant Dungeon, there were very set races that had separated themselves because they wanted to maintain their independence as, when the Demon Treaty was made. So... for example, the Loriadoran Unitary State, as it was known at the time, had a lot of your Asimar, it had a lot of your, atypical D&D kind of like humanoid races that you would see, the humans, the dwarves, the elves. But because of the way that they had kind of done it, is there was 13 guild families that were essentially the nobility, the governing body of the world, and anytime they took people into their guilds and things like this, basically the people that were joining the guild ended up having to take on the guild family's name. So eventually, after, if they got married and had kids or whatever, the kids would take on the guild family name. And so even if they had been adopted into the family, eventually their original family name just would cease to exist. And that's kind of what the LUS was kind of like. And so there were separationists who the LUS called them the Wildlanders, who basically agreed to help when the demons attacked, because hell opened up and demons attacked. They agreed to help, but they refused to join the demon treaty because hell had basically lost the war, and everyone within the LUS at birth was assigned a demonic familiar, kind of similar to his Dark Materials a little bit. So I do very much like to take inspiration from books, TV shows, even music that inspires me. I think all of us kind of do that to a certain degree. That was bad of me. There we go. Okay. Now that we have put a whole heap of trees in, Tyrant Dungeon, should I make a very dense Arctic forest? Invisible people. Yes. Invisible people. How would that even work mechanically? You literally wouldn't be able to see them. These are a lot of Fey civilizations over here. That's the thing. Oh, so you can see them by what they're carrying. That's kind of cool. Wait, does that mean that like rogues who want to be super stealthy are legit naked though? Whoa, you'd hate to be caught with your pants down in those situations. Pardon the pun. Isn't that the concept that they used for Sue Storm? At least in the... I'm not completely down with all of the actual comic book lore on this, but Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four, at least in the movie she did. Put a dense forest over there. Now, with this map, where should we put some ruins? You'll like one of the names of the towns in this place. It's called well, it's not really a town per se. It is a keep called the Oozing Desolation. The Oozing Destitution, there you go. It's in kind of like the mud realm, you know? Also, we've got Boglost, we've also got Mudbutt. So, you know me. Find a good icon first, I think. That will help. for some ruins. This isn't quite the same style, though. Oh, they're ports. Oh, they're cute little anchors. True. You just need to name everything orc. Might use those ones. Might use these ones, I think. However, we'll do a little bit of filtering because I want them to be a darker hue. Make it bigger so I can see what I'm doing. I like to start with a bluish base. It is simple ingenuity, and it's a good way to know exactly what you're talking about all the time. There we go. How big are these ones? They're 31. Okay. We'll keep it then, I think, in the same wheelhouse. Oh, yes. We've also got Puddle Wump over here. So yes, I think I asked very, very early on before we had a number of people in here, but what are some of your favourite kind of fae? What are some of your favourite fae stories and things like this? And it can be real world mythos, it can be just D&D mythos, it could be a completely different mythos. I'm interested in all. Besides Tinkerbell, yeah, Tinker's Hollow has got a bit of traction now thanks to the fairies spin-off there. What are some... Just just doing a little look of like what are like some kind of muddy fae. Doing a quick Google search. Interesting. Interesting. See, the ones that I know the most are kind of like your Celtic kind of ones. Yeah, like your banshees and things like this. Water horses, sylphs, this kind of thing. Obviously some of these nymphs and things like that are a bit more, well, I think they're a combination of Celtic and Greek, but obviously Romans and the Celts have a lot of overlap in those kind of areas. So because of the history of the world. Yep. They were tied with dryads and things like that. There's obviously also the Selkies as well, which of course are the seal people. And in Celtic mythos, fairies live in mounds. So I thought I'd give that a go. I also know that I want some myconid like villages as well, because love me some mushroom people. Mushroom boys, yes. I'm glad I'm inspiring you. That's kind of like the point of this, is to inspire people to create more maps and things like this. See, it's fun. Working on your world maps are fun. What is your world about? Oh, dear. I'll have to ask you about it later then. Because I do love talking world stuff. I hope you've all got a good beverage tonight, insofar as you're remembering to hydrate. I myself have a brown sugar creme brulee bubble tea, boba. Mm-hmm. It's so good. I've got water too. Water is important. Keep hydrated. What should we call this fairy mound? It's probably a little too cold up here for it to be a Myconid village. And obviously I will add to these. More mound? Mound more. Faymore. Ooh, I like more mound. I think I'll go more mound. Call it a barrow, which of course is a place that I believe people buried their dead in the old Celtic kind of ways. I will name this one after a fun little mushroom. Yes, I like it. Yeah, we have a little mushroom in the we have a little Myconid man in the Tuesday game at the moment. His name is Moral. He got everybody in the party very, very, very drunk. And everybody else in the tavern too. Which led to shenanigans, and it was hilarious. It led to the group being led to the Honeypot Host Club, which is basically just an underground organisation that deals in criminal activity and aren't really a host club. They just front as a host club. The host club idea. Yeah, they're a great way. And especially because obviously in my home game that I don't stream, I obviously use Pinterest artwork and things like this for my NPCs and whatnot. So it's a good way to get in a lot of those attractive NPCs that I keep getting accused of using. They are a group of is it a reverse host club when it's all women? It's basically a group of terrifying women who basically go around and slave traders and assassins and things like that. I might have to make this big Maya dark text. I might actually have to make that slightly more visible. I don't want to bring it up too dark. There we go. I'll bring Feyawyr up. Frosthelm needs to come up. Custom assets. I have to admit, I mostly do my own because I am an overachiever, as we both know. And up until recently, Tyrant Dungeon, I didn't actually know a lot of artist friends. I think you might actually be the second of them in my whole 5 years. So, there you go. I know. Tyrant Dungeon is a wonderful artist for anyone who likes seeing character art and things like that. I believe they have a Twitch channel themselves. They do have a Twitch channel themselves. I don't know why I speculated on that, because I do have you linked in our About section. What I meant to say is I'm pretty sure they have a TikTok, but I don't know if you've got all of that linked on your channel. You do stream. I've seen you there. I've even managed to catch you a few times. You have a very, very... just your usual sketchy style is really, really cute. I absolutely adore your style. And even seeing some of your like more serious artworks, they are absolutely phenomenal. And I will use my platform to build up my friends and make you like bring attention to your awesomeness. Okay, how are we looking? Do another save. Thank you, Tyrant Dungeon. See, we've got a lot of love here, people. So, yeah, jump in. For those of you who are watching along or whatever, just jump in, say hi, you know. I don't think it's World Pirate Day today, so. Okay. At this point, I think that we are just about done with autumn, and for the time being, we are just about done with autumn and winter. So now that I've saved this, might take a quick break, just as I set up another map. The question is, should we go winter, spring, or summer, autumn? Which season should we work on next? Which part of the map? What would people like to see? Decisions. I forgot the options. Winter, spring, which is to the right of this map, or summer, autumn, which is to the north. South. Directions to the south of this map. Winter, spring. Any other takers on any other options? well, winter spring it is then. Okay, I will be right back. Everyone take the opportunity to have a break, and I will see you back in about 5 minutes. Okay, so we are back. Hopefully everything's still working. Didn't break anything, did I? I don't think so. There we go. So, this has the under map to it. So as you can see, there are different things about it. This is from the original... this is from the original map, which is basically the world known as Avani. But obviously, after the events of the Necronomicon, this is what we have ended up with. So, this has been completely untouched, but because I have completely cut it from a larger map, we'll just remove out a couple of pieces here. for the sake of this, see the Hoodoo Hills are there. And all that. We might actually put in these big tree stump pieces. It's got to go up layers as well. Put it up to layer 5. Now I believe this has to go. Oh, I think it actually goes this way. No, it actually goes this way. I think. We'll see. Pretty sure it's a different one. We'll see. I figured it out. That looks a bit more correct at least. At least Tyrant Dungeon, we will have our resident Wookiee with us this week as well. So he will get to fight a cybernetic Nexu. Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, I think he has to watch it too. Catch up where he's up to. I think that looks about right. There. So yeah. I'm fairly certain we're on your ship as well. We have to figure out if you initiated the Fluffy protocol. Somehow I feel like you are probably responsible for the Fluffy protocol. Okay. I think I'm going to have to build this place up a little bit. Give me enough room to build some mountains. Oh, really? That's hilarious. What are you? I'm trying to figure out what this is. This root. Oh gosh. What's oh gosh? The tiny land details. Yeah. See, this part of the world building is what takes the longest. Purely because I like it, like going around and making it, the coastlines look organic. Okay. But as you can see, I've missed a couple of little spots here. So we go through and we fill in all these little holes that I left. Yeah. It's surprisingly time consuming to make it look it takes a surprising amount of time to make it look organic. Go around and fix that up in a minute. So yeah, I'll want to go in and put a whole heap of like mountainous regions around this root as well, because obviously it's grown through the crust of the earth and things like this. So I want to give it that little bit of detailing, I suppose. I could probably go with a slightly bigger brush. And I have a plan that I want to put in somewhere. Where do I want to put it in though? That isn't on this original map. I'll go through and I'll fix this up in a minute. This coastline. Get it filled for now. So obviously there's no bay here anymore. Just a little too blobby up here. Take out some of this blobbiness, because that is what is going to help it look a little bit more like it's supposed to be like this. Fill in a few more of these land holes where I clearly did not fill it in very well, but didn't notice, probably because there were trees covering it at one point. Tree brushes, they cover a multitude of sins. Just like fur and hair brushes. Or the pose where the character has their hands behind the back. Because unless you've drawn the hands like 6 times, have you really drawn hands? You know it's true, Tyrant. I've got to change these hills over here because at the moment they are being eaten. The problem I've got is where this joins with the other map, I can't change this connection point here. Otherwise, they're not going to match up. But I also need to completely move these hills. First things first. Get all the trees. I want to keep that pine tree, that tree stump table though. See, I knew that was going to happen. Not what I wanted to do. Damn. See, I don't want to remove those mountains, but I need to remove the trees. clear all of these trees just out of the range of that mountain. So when I can select this entire row of trees, I can delete them. Hi, Silvery Sphere. I am wonderful. How are you today? Oh, that's nice. Over here in Australia, we are getting towards the end of our day, I say, as it is getting on towards closer to, in a little bit it'll be midnight. It's at about 10:30 at the moment where I am. So just doing some world building for my D&D game. 9 a.m. That's a good time to wake up. Honestly, anything before 8 is just ungodly. And I am aware that people have to do that for work and things, but it doesn't mean I like it. Did not want to remove the tree stump. Are you sure it's sometimes you wake up before 8 Tyrant Dungeon, or you just haven't gone to bed yet? Wake up, not stay up. Yeah. I actually managed to get a surprising amount of work done today, which is why my voice sounds a little hoarse now. Because I use my voice a lot for my job. So... yeah, I hate that. I used to work in hospitality, so yeah, especially the hotel night shift. It was hard, I tell you, to readjust to like normal people hours. Especially since I've always kind of been a bit of a night owl myself. It's really hard too when you find yourself like you've acclimatized to being a night owl like that as well, because like I find that I actually really enjoy the quiet peacefulness of being awake when the rest of the world sleeps. You know, it certainly makes my actual job a lot easier, because obviously I need quiet to be able to record and things like this for my job. So you know, there's a lot less cars, there's a lot less, you know, air traffic and things like this around me. So, which all of that stuff does contribute to harder things. I just did the one thing I said I shouldn't do. There we go. Can't change that. Yeah, it's just peaceful as well. It's also a lot less problematic people to deal with at 3 a.m. Although, you know, it is very much harder to wake up the next day when you need to, but... does lead me to falling asleep earlier than I want to as well. I wonder. Oh, well, that's bad news for you. That sucks. People should just go to bed, you know, and sleep and, you know, not bother you. How rude of them. Well, you are amongst late night friends here. See, we don't have so much of that problem in Australia, so... which I know is an argument I think that has been said until everyone is blue in the face. It's just not really a problem we deal with in Australia. Not to say that gun crime and stuff like that doesn't happen. It just... yeah, in the States it is a little different. I've got some American friends and players, and they have very much stated that yes, it is a very different kind of like ballpark that you're working with, unfortunately. See, this collection of butts, for everyone who's been here from the start or nearest the start during this conversation, this one looks a little bit like a butt. Yes, I was belaboring the point about I've got some players who in one of my games has referred to a series of hills that is known as Gumnut Valley as the Butt Hills. Yeah, see? They really do look like a butt. And just, I think there's a specific combination that I've used where they made a point of saying it looks like, I'll see if I can find it. But apparently in a certain combination, I've got some players that turned around and said, yeah, it legit looks like, I think it's like that. Yeah, see? Apparently it looks like a woman laying face down on a bed with her butt in the air. Well, they've kind of called it the Butt Hills and Crack Valley and all this kind of stuff, but that is not. It's called Gumnut Valley, but I mean, it's not the first time in that particular map. They have also there is a water-based town called Hall's Rift, WHORL, and yes, they do refer to it how you think they do. As well as they have a bit of a good laugh about Boomeadow as well, and various things like this. I did make the mistake of allowing one of my players to name a town. Don't be like me, be smart, don't let your players name towns. because he spent far too much time researching specific names and things like this. I don't want to say what he named the town, but he created like a whole like in-game lore for the town and all this kind of stuff. You know, like there was a statue in the middle of the city, which if I describe it, hopefully those who are of age might understand what it was called. But yeah, it was like a statue. Apparently a woman who had been a saint or something had saved the town, and she was on her knees. So the statue was a woman on her knees in the middle of a city, and it was a snowy area where it always snowed. So the statue was always covered in snow. So yeah, I learned my lesson there, not to give my players the chance for that kind of ammunition. Oh yeah, it is what you think it is. So yeah, I had a town in this world that was named very creatively. We won't keep these as the Hoodoo Hills. I might change that. Well, I will change that to be a bit more, I think, thematically appropriate to the spring and winter courts. Just move it back on a little bit. I don't want to move that one because that one will have a secondary half, I think. Kind of like that, I think. Yeah. I think Tyrant Dungeon, you've heard about this story. Yeah, it does. A DM for 20 years. Oh, God. I have not been DMing that long. God, it's been just over 5 years now. And I've always DM'd online. So, most of my worlds have been online. And yeah, this has just been a... Oh, see, that's cool. Yeah, no, I started DMing about 5 years ago, and so this world has eventually grown and now spans 4 eras. This will be the 4th era that I'm designing for now, and it is a bit more, a little bit further away from fantasy per se. A bit more into a kind of futuristic arcana tech. I don't want to say cyberpunky, but there is that element to it. Because, yeah, things have happened in the world to make it just that little bit harder to live. And Tyrant Dungeon was actually a character in the 3rd era of the world. So... in which there was a Necronomicon, eldritch beings, all of that kind of stuff. So, how big is this mountain gonna be? Yeah, see, I like so much of the old lore. That's one of the things that, like, I've always enjoyed story building and things like this. And so, I like world building, storytelling. And that was really one of the things that kind of inspired me. And I love going back and looking at all the old lore that Wizards of the Coast has created for, their settings and things like this, and just the depth of the lore to it. I really enjoy reading a lot of that stuff. So, because I think it's interesting to get to see the way different people tell fantasy and, even modern fantasy. So, which of course I know has kind of been heavily debated and talked about in recent years, in even recent months, what with D&D 1 coming to fruition and things like that. And there's some good stuff and some bad stuff. I have not actually had a group of players destroy the universe yet. Not to say that they couldn't if they didn't want to. I've always kind of run my games that I don't care what my players end up doing. They can just... I do big world fantasy, i.e., the world needs saving a lot of the time. But at the same time, I really want my players to be the one that decide the outcome of the world. So I do say to my players, I don't care if you want to, like, for example, the second era where they were like realm witches and they were designed to save the world. Oh, thanks for following. They were designed to save the world and everything. But I said to them, I don't care if you kill the gods. I don't care if you mend the tapestry of Fae. I don't care if, what you want to do. Just, do what you want in the world because your characters live in it. It has to be what your characters would do, like legitimately, because, I have actually had to say to a couple of players once before, like, because they're like, what? I don't want to be a hero. Why would I want to be a hero? And I'm like, because your character lives in the world. As much as, we drive home the fact that this is still a game, you still want your players to feel like they have a say in the outcome of the world that they're in. Like, I'm just here to facilitate their storytelling. While I write a story, if that's not the story they want to play out, I'm not going to sit here and, try to force them to play this story that they just are not interested in. Because, then no one's going to have a good time, and what's the point of that, And, even in the 5 years, I've had an amalgamation of just, obviously everyone has a learning curve and everything like this as a DM. And, initially in the beginning, I did struggle a little bit with the idea of having this story. And it did take me a little while to realize, it's not just about the story I want to tell. It's also, it really is a collaborative effort. And it's, something that I keep endeavoring to try and be a better DM all the time and, figure out what, I tended to, when I first started out, I was a very soft touch DM and, I've had to learn over time to have a few more boundaries and like my expectations of what I want for the game as well, and actually being able to voice them to the players in a way that, well, this is what I want to do, but, we've got to be on the same page if, we want this story to continue. So, but I love the collaborative effort of it. Yeah, which I've never understood that. Like, I honestly, over the last 5 years, I have really learned the benefit. I'm not always the greatest at keeping the secret of the story. Like, I get really excited and I want to share with them. So I still have to work on that a little bit more, as Tyrant Dungeon will tell you. But yeah, I really like the fact that their actions need to have consequences. Otherwise, what is to stop them from just going crazy and, just doing whatever they want, killing whoever they want, like there has to be rules of the universe that in which their characters live. And, that's going to be different for every kind of DM, every character kind of thing. So yeah, I have had to learn, actions have consequences and putting those in place. And, there has been success and failure with that. So, sometimes I learned the lesson a little bit late, and so, you know, I have had a couple of games. Yeah. I don't actually make a lot of notes. I will admit that. Like, I actually record my sessions because I'm terrible at keeping notes. And, you know, I have found that there are a couple of players that I have, for example, that aren't great at keeping notes or, you know, remembering stuff, even if they do keep notes. So I just record them and put them up in like a Google Drive that basically the players can go back and watch it if they need to, listen to it if they need to. Because, yeah, I don't remember. It's not just you, Tyrant Dungeon. Oh, I have so many notebooks and I will lose them and rediscover, and then I'm like, you know, 6 months, a year later, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I was going to do. So, yeah, I've had a couple moments like that. Where are my notes? What size were you? I made that the wrong size. You are... that one. Oh, story writing program. What do you use? Because at the moment I do use World Anvil, but I am terrible at actually filling it out because, and this is part of the way that I actually design games, I don't write in a linear pattern. So I'll have to look into it. Yeah, because the problem I have with World Anvil is a lot of the time I have to create an article to link back to it, and the problem with that is, you know, I have to create in a linear pattern and I don't always do that, so I'm not the greatest at writing in that linear pattern. Oh, see, that's a good idea. Well, yeah, Tyrant Dungeon, you've played in one of my worlds. You can tell how non-linear the actual creative process is. It's really hilarious because Evil One and I can't actually plan together because he obviously plans very linear, whereas I am all over the joint. Like, I have these weird little... in a vaguish kind of way, like mnemonic things. Like, I will think of one thing and be reminded as I'm talking about it, this thing will remind me of another thing, and I'll just like spiral off. Yeah, I'll have to look into it a little bit better because the amount of notebooks I have now is ridiculous, and I keep losing like my D&D notes. I mean, it does mean that, you know, 6 months down the track I come back and I'm like, that was such a good idea. Like, I completely forgot about that. It's happened more than once and it's hilarious. I'm going to keep Witch Dark Reef and Pentacle Bay because I liked those. Ah. Orf? Nope, did not mean that to be. Boof. Now, I was going to up here, I think. Empty these, hollow these out. Oh God, 63 ring binders. That is incredible. I mean, I've got a whole heap of like ring binders for a whole heap of homebrewed or third party like documents and stuff. Because I like Insider and other things like this. There are a number of resources that I have since like followed and on Patreon and Kickstarter and things like this that I've used, and I really so I do like having hard copies, but if they're not easily accessible, I end up finding that they just kind of end up sitting there. And because all of my stuff is digital as well, I sometimes find it easier to access the PDFs. However, the problem with this is a lot of the time I forget what's in what. Like, I don't have the physical copies that I can thumb through to get ideas. Okay, Milanote. I'll also have to look at that one then as well. Oh, see, that's kind of cool. Yeah, like my worlds are completely custom worlds in so far as like, you know, I'm creating them and things like this, but I do take a lot of inspiration from like a lot of my favorite books and stuff like this. Like the concept for this triple plane world actually comes from a series of books that I really like by Anne Bishop. And I'm like, that's really cool. The thing is, I need to figure out how I'm going to work the magic aspect in this world, because it's going to be low magic. But at the same time, I obviously don't want to hobble my players who want to play casters, obviously. Which is part of the reason we're going to start in the Feyawyr region a little bit as well. Just so there is that little bit more freedom, obviously, where they're not going to have to deal with like persecution from witches, like because they have magic. Yeah. I did have a crazy thought, like a midnight fever dream, that I'm like, oh, why don't I just completely custom create a whole new like mechanic or whatever, or like just a whole new game set kind of thing, like my own game system. And then, you know, the sensible part of my brain went, no, don't do that, you crazy person. You will regret it. Don't do that. Because, you know, game systems take at least a handful of people to figure out every aspect of it. And anyone who has played with me, yeah, see, that's one of the things that I'm thinking will actually come into play as well. But yeah, anyone who's played with me knows I'm math real bad. So trying to create my own custom you know, game system is a terrible idea, especially if it's based in anything math related. As I said before, we record our sessions, and I do have a recording of me mathing really bad of how much they should pay a ship and their crew. I think it was like, and the way that I said it was such certainty. Like, yeah, I said it with a lot of certainty that I should not have been that. I should not have felt that assured in myself. Oh, that's kind of cool. Mega Man. See, the world that I'm building, I did think briefly that I was going to run it in a different system. Just because I've been feeling like some of the D&D stuff that's been coming out has been, especially the UA stuff, has been less of my cup of tea. But then I keep remembering the fact that I do a lot of custom rules and stuff like this, or stuff, and you know, it's a bit more of a homebrewed world, so some of these rules don't necessarily apply to me and my settings anyway. So, and I kind of have to keep reminding myself of that. So here you go. We'll put some Fingy Lakes in for you, Tyrant Dungeon. Yeah, just some of the rule sets that have come out in UA and stuff. And I know that they've blown up on Twitch and all this kind of Twitter and TikTok, and everybody has a lot of opinions about them, you know. But as I keep reminding myself, and as people, other DMs have reminded me, if you don't like one of the rules, just don't use it. Chicken fingers, I will make them a delicacy. Hey, in the Tuesday game, turducken has become a delicacy for some reason. Oh, that's so cool. I'm so happy for you. Yeah, turducken became a real thing. Don't ask me how. Again, it's one of those player things that I'm like, why is this a thing? But this is also the game in which this is a mouthful. This is also the same game that in a fight against zombies on a dock, the Tabaxi artificer rode into battle on a triceratops holding a red panda holding a shotgun. I have to say that slowly because it is as insane as it sounds. Originally, there had been 5 red pandas in a trench coat holding a shotgun. The first shot they took with the shotgun blew them apart, and that's when the Tabaxi rode past on the Triceratops, picked up the red panda holding the shotgun, and wielded the red panda. His name is Sabata. His character is called Sabata, and he's basically Puss in Boots. Yeah, it was crazy. I don't know how we got to that point, but we did. No, they don't have a rapier because they have pistols. So yeah, he's Puss in Boots meets Inigo Montoya, basically, but with guns. Yes, the party has a paladin, 2 warlocks, I know he's an artificer, but I can't remember what his other class is because he's multi-classed. And then we have a wood elf, monk, rogue, ranger. All of them are the shadow versions. Shadow monk, gloomstalker ranger. Can't remember what rogue. Rogue assassin, I think, actually. Yeah. I believe. He's a ninja, clearly. It was a great time, basically. They managed to save Sabata's father, who was being held hostage by the powerful person who was basically creating the zombies to control people as a threat, basically. We do have a Discord, but we don't have a public one yet that I know of. We've only really... I know we do kind of, but not a public one yet. I think Evil One's been setting one up, but we haven't really actually been streaming all that long, so we haven't really thought about all that public stuff yet. It's only kind of really happened. But definitely keep following along because we do plan on opening it up to our followers and things like this. Because obviously we do play a lot of different tabletop games now. It is in the making, just like everything. As you asked earlier, Tyrant Dungeon, you're like, oh, do you have the shout outs? And I'm like, no, I don't know how to do that yet. So you're going to have to help me with that. But yeah, we do a lot of tabletop kind of games now. Over on Evil One's channel, which is linked in my About section below, we play the Star Wars Fantasy Flights game on Sunday nights. We play that. We are playing a Grung game on the opposite fortnights to the night that I stream. So we're going to be playing that. That's within obviously D&D. And we are just chaotic little frogs. We have Vampire the Masquerade coming to Thursdays. We have a Alien TTRPG coming on Saturdays, I believe. At some point we're playing Feng Shui. I don't know when that's happening. There's a whole heap of things basically that we're trying to get all sorted out to play in and things like this. So, and I know that Evil One is going to want to try and get other players as well. So we're not just consistently playing with the same group of people. So, yeah. So but yeah, we definitely like talking to other DMs. We kind of, you know, just kind of chill out. We all kind of have these kind of same opinions that, you know, as long as everybody's having fun, you know, that's what matters. So, yeah. And yes, Tyrant Dungeon, I will definitely take your help after stream, which should be coming up shortly. I'm just going to finish naming these lakes, and then I think I will be done for the night. So, I do plan on streaming on Wednesday nights fortnightly, making this Boomeadow Builds a longer stream. But normally I stream Monday through to Friday at 10:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time till 11:30. So it's only for an hour, and there's a variety of things that I do. I'm going to be doing this Boomeadow Builds twice a week. I do Little Witch in the Woods. All right, talk to you later, Silver. Yeah, definitely. Just follow along. We'll always be on here talking about it. So I hope you have a good day. So just name these last little finger lakes for now. Thanks, Silver, and thank you for following. It's great to have you here. I think I'm going to change these two around. Oh God, I hope they don't have it. Each lake has a speciality. I hope not. That would. Although I do make pretty fantastic tavern menus, so. This over here. Want to just delete these trees on this. Okay, so that's that. We do want to rename the Hoodoo Hills, but for now, I think this is where we will end tonight. Thank you everybody for joining along, jumping in and chatting. Thank you to everybody who joined and followed. It's great to have you all here. As I was saying, I stream Monday through to Friday. In the morning for an hour. You can find all of those streams in post-play, or if they have been deleted from the face of Twitch, you can find them over on my YouTube channel by the same name, Boomeadow. Otherwise, you can catch me on Sunday nights in Only Credits, which is a Star Wars Fantasy Flights game. Otherwise, I will see you here for another stream of Boomeadow Builds in a fortnight. Which you can check on my schedule, of course. Otherwise, thank you. It's been wonderful, and I hope you have a wonderful night or a wonderful day wherever you are, and I will see you later. Bye.